It's called the shape shifters. So you are shifting shape to suit where the money. So anywhere the money go, anywhere the left is. Please, we know that's in politics, so
but
don't bring it ahead. But there are people like that.
But it shouldn't be.
Hello and welcome to Impact Bureau, a unique podcast brought to you by Mayan Organization. Impact Bureau is designed for NGO leaders, executives, founders, members, and trustees. Think of us on Impact Bureau as your unincorporated trustees who give you real advice that you wish your real board coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Hi, welcome to this edition of your favorite podcast, Impact Bureau. Yay! Thank you for joining us on today's episode. I'm so thrilled that you're keeping it live, keeping it real with us. As always, we love our Impact Bureau community. My name is Adam, and you always love to call me Edie, and I'm here again with your girl, Mo. Yes, I'm here with the delectable Mo Turayo, Mo for short. And we have another super edition, conversation, super chat planned for you this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. So it's going to be fun. Thank you once again.
Okay, so today we're talking about money matters. I'm sure everybody will be interested in this, partly because some people don't even understand how NGOs get funded. And then for those who are even already in the NGO space, like for founders, new founders mainly, they might be struggling with, how do I get the money? Or I'm hearing about restricted and unrestricted funding. How do I go about it? What are even the sources of funding for an NGO? So basically, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So don't go nowhere. Stay tuned. Okay, so Edie, let's just dive into it.
Okay.
So money matters. Money.
Yes.
Where is the money coming from?
My sister, if I knew, this place would be flowing. I'll be swimming in money. In fact, I'll not be throwing the dollars. I'll be throwing it in your front. But
like, seriously,
it's really important because I always tell people, you can have the best laid plans, you can have the best laid structures, you can have the best blueprints. If there's no petrol in that engine, in that car, you're not moving from location from point A to point B.
Yeah.
So it's very crucial. I think, and I'm so glad that today's conversation is about money. A lot of people have been messaging me, when are you going to talk about money? So if you've not subscribe now, so you'll be getting notifications. But anyway, so you started with what should be the sources.
Like, what are the sources? Let's talk about the sources, because I know that a lot of people don't know. They don't know. It's just like when I first started volunteering online. I remember walking up to you one day and I'm like, where is the money coming from? Because if we were an organization that was rendering services or selling something, I know customers will walk in, like that's typical of what they buy a product, we get our money. So what is sustaining us really? At that time I did not know. So I mean, let's put out the information.
What is sustaining us really? It should be a caption. What's sustaining us really? So I'll speak from my own experience and my understanding of the non-governmental or the non-profit landscape. Now, the way development work is, and I'm really happy, that's one of the reasons why I'm very happy about the SDGs, because the SDGs, the coming of the SDGs helped to really conceptualize this whole space of, even for non-profits and basically NGOs. Well, even for profits, exactly, because there are a lot of social enterprises, whose operations are within the domains of the SDG. But speaking about now, just us in the non-profit sector, yes. It helped to really give conceptual understanding of this thing called development work, or this thing, because prior to that, NGOs were seen as orphanages and charities. If you're an NGO, you run an orphanage, or it's a charity. So people did not really have a broad understanding of NGOs as doing, when you think about non-governmental objectives, really that's what the NGO stands for, right? Non-governmental organization. So you're trying to carry out, the objectives of government, but you're not government. Yeah. And what are the objectives of government? Many people don't know the fundamental obligations of governance in the Constitution. So the social contract, give you an education, ensure water, access to security, access to livelihoods, all of those things that many organizations, making sure that the most disadvantaged people, the people living with disabilities, people at the margins of society, marginalized, also have access to equal opportunities and equal, chances of succeeding. So I start from there because now what it means is that when you have that full understanding of where you are positioned to offer value, it then should tell you who is responsible for supporting that value you are offering in the world. Anybody who is therefore concerned with those same objectives of governance or those aspects of development that are filled with gaps is therefore your source, because you started with where are we to source this thing from. So what that therefore means is that governments become a source of funding because governments are the primary entities responsible for governmental objectives in the first instance, right? So that's why you have governments giving subventions to organizations, NGOs. Also, donor organizations, multilateral systems, international organizations that are in the business of ensuring development. The World Bank, the USAIDs, the UNESCOs, the UN systems, the United Nations and its different systems, WHO, ILO, International Labour Organization. So all of these organizations that sort of do supervisory work globally to make sure that populations around the world have access to opportunities, populations like for basis of human rights, equal opportunities, all of those things, making sure that people are not living in starvation, poverty, people are not living in the middle of public health challenges. So these kinds of entities / organizations become sources of funding. People in your community who are also interested and invested in making sure that they're not even in development as a concept, but they want to live safely, securely, peacefully. If I want to live safely, securely, peacefully, I'm interested therefore in my neighbor not being in a position to be a threat to me. I therefore become invested in supporting my neighbors to also do well, or just for charitable reasons. I'm wealthy and I want to make sure that God uses me as a conduit to bless others. So individuals become sources of these funds. Also corporations, by virtue of the principle called corporate social responsibility. It is a principle in the establishment and running and operations of companies or corporations globally that wherever you're located or your business dealings or ventures are located, you should also, be involved, engaging the community in ways that prosper that community. So you shouldn't only extract value out of that community through the profits that you're making from the sales of your products or your services, but you must be plowing back some measure of those profits to ensuring that the community prospers and achieves progress. So that's the principle behind corporate social responsibility. What it therefore means is that corporations also become sources of funding. So these are examples of where these individuals, people who also have stake, we call them stakeholders, they have a stake in ensuring that the same outcomes that I am pursuing are achieved. They become automatically the sources to whom I visit to say, support this work because it is in your mutual interest for the outcomes to be realized.
Okay, so now that we've established the sources of funding, corporate organizations, government, international organizations, individuals, so
even family foundations, there's some foundations in the world that like Jacob's Foundation, they fund a lot of work in education. There are quite a number of in families who maybe they had corporations, they had companies, and they become like Rockefeller, a lot of Carnegie, so they give to different causes globally. You understand?
So those can also be sources.
So they're like private donor organizations.
The NGO itself, can it also generate funds?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And CSC allows for that. So now, to the extent that you are not selling those things for profit, the only thing about the way you are incorporated is that you cannot enrich the members of your incorporation, that is your trustees. Those of you that came together to incorporate this NGO, at no point in time should you be engaged in any form of business that enriches you, in other words, that gives you profit. So that is why, for instance, even when you're incorporating, part of the expectations is that if the NGO is one day closing down, do you know that you're not expected to liquidate the assets or liquidate the things you own and then share it amongst yourselves? Even if it was you people that were the first donors, you people bought it with your hard-earned money, no, you are expected to liquidate it and hand over the process to another organization. Or instead of liquidating, just hand over everything, like all these your chairs, all these your tables. Find another organization either going to do similar work or just an organization that is in the NGOs, that you pass it on to them. So that's how, to the extent, that's how the law looks at you, that at no point in time should you profit out of this work. It is in service to the public or to the population. Now, based on that, yes, you can do some forms of independent internal things, business. You can engage in businesses that earn you revenue for the purpose of plowing back that revenue to sustain the work that you do. Yes, so you're not expected to go and develop one nice product or have one pure water factory and start, selling pure water, and then you say you're an NGO. No, you were sneaking in the back door to do a business. CSC would rather say, assuming you want to do skills empowerment, if you are training people to make black soap, do you understand? I know that you are building capacity of young people so that they can start their own businesses tomorrow, so that they can be employable in another soap factory another day. So it will allow you to make soap and sell soap. But the money from the sale of those soaps is supposed to keep going back to ensuring that that capacity building program continues to run. Not that next thing we know it, you are a soap factory. You are now marketing soap, selling soap. You are now raking in profit. At the end of the day, you are sharing. This year we sold 1 billion in profit. So that's the thing. So you can't have IGR.
Okay, so now let's talk about grants, because that's another major source of funding. Are there still grants government grants in Nigeria that NGOs are able to access? Because I don't get to hear about that. And that's one conversation I think we should have. Maybe someone out there who is looking forward to working with the government on some grants might be able to access that. But I'm more aware of international organizations, international governments outside Nigeria saying they want to give, and international bodies like that. So let's even talk about the world of grants itself, locally and internationally. How can one how can an organization position itself first of all to get such grants, and then when you even get such grants, whether it's restricted or unrestricted, how can you go about it? Because there are so many issues around grants.
So there are a lot of questions.
People don't even understand.
So that's passing a lot of questions there. So depending, are there grants? Are there grants
Locally and
internationally?
I know about international.
How do you access it? How do you access it? What is the last one? You walk back this your question one by one. So let's start from the first one. And the first one you said was do governments also support NGOs? You call it grants, but yes. So governments like ministries, health, of women affairs, of education. So what they do is that in states, because at the end of the day, Nigeria has a national government, the federal government, and sub-nationals, the states. So what happens is that many of the state governments have different ministries, right? These ministries oftentimes invite organizations, non-governmental organizations, to come and register. So these organizations go through a verification process because the government wants to make sure that you are credible, that you indeed exist, and that you're doing the things you claim you are set up to do, and that you are effective in doing it, right? So they want to see those things. So they will invite you, Ministry Agency for Youth, for instance. We, in our organization, we registered with the Agency for Youth in Oyo State. They did the necessary verifications. You go through the process and you get certified. They'll give you a certificate and things like that. It means that they can work with you. Sometimes, depending on the allocations to those ministries, what they do is they give these credible organizations who are on their database subventions. So when they want to, like Ministry of Women Affairs, Social Welfare, when they want to work with persons with disability, they have maybe very registered organizations that they give subventions to. In Oyo State, for instance, let me give an example. I know that the Oluyole Shesha Home, which is a home that provides care for persons with disability. It not just provides care, education, it even houses them, right? So they receive subventions. Part of the monies that
But I was going to say, have you seen?
Yes, I'm aware. So I'm aware of one. I mean, it's never enough, and there's always, I continue to advocate that the government, does more routine assessments to bring in more active organizations instead of just working with a register that is as old as. Then enlighten members of the civil society community that come and do these, come and do these things, and then share with them the programs that the government is running. See how maybe one organization can help with the aspect of programs and implementation. In health, for instance, they can help with the setting up.
Because I don't know about RFPs for this kind of stuff.
No, it's not going to be called through an RFP. That's what I'm saying. So the process is not RFP is a donor doing a request for proposal.
But government can have something that is almost equal to that.
They have their process, which I'm spelling out for you. Do you understand? So, for instance, first of all, you've got to be registered with them. They must know you as a community of actors in this space. It's important. So it is expected that if you're doing work in a specific area or thematic area, find out what ministry governs or regulates or to some extent is caretaker over the activities or the outcomes in that state that you're functioning in. So if your work is you're supporting people living with disabilities, you really should, the Ministry of Women Affairs, Social Welfare should know you. Do you understand? So those kinds of things are first. But then to the point of the call,
exactly.
yes, to the point of the call, that's where we're talking about. I think what your point is, government programs. So for instance, if maybe the Oyo State government has decided that all persons living with disabilities, it no longer wants to see any of them as street beggars or chains and all that. So there is a program that the Oyo State government is running, Operation Zero Street Begging for persons with disabilities. It's now backing it with funds, right? It should announce publicly to call for organizations working in those areas to say come in and
so that there is an equal chance of people who are already even registered.
Exactly.
So
So
like
because it's about
interest
information sharing,
Yes.
it's about partnering with these organs
Exactly.
because they will get into the grassroots communities that
Exactly.
sometimes government
Exactly.
systems have not penetrated
Yeah.
as deep. That's the power.
So it's not just a
of
reoccurrence of
community-based
people who have gotten such grants
in the
before,
past.
always like,
I agree
almost
completely.
being,
And it just shows partnership because the goals can only be achieved through partnership. That's why goal 17 talks about partnership for the goals. So it just shows a collaboration with all this, that all of us must put our heads together and work together towards recording these outcomes. So the fact that you are the one funding it, share the let carry
so
everybody
it's
along.
transparent as
Yes, then
as much as it can.
monitor the activities of these
Exactly.
organizations. You should also allow these organizations monitor your activities, monitor the flow of resources. How were these monies disbursed? But
Exactly.
it comes down to the transparency. It comes down to the accountability. It comes down to the real integrity behind these interventions or these programs and policies. Now let's look at the other aspects, the global or international landscape. There are a lot of organizations standing along every theme of the SDG to fund projects, activities, programs, organizations working in those areas. Typically, let me also be very clear, oftentimes there are certain themes that are placed as priorities every year.
Okay.
Now, what will happen is that you should be able to get signals by what, just how you follow the news, attend all these, or pay attention to World Economic Forum, pay attention to the UN General Assembly meetings. What's happening is that when all these world leaders and all these different stakeholders globally converge, they have conversations that escalate into resolutions. These resolutions signify the direction that they are going to be taking. So, I mean, unless you've been living in a cave in the Antarctic or where I don't know, or you, for some reason, you were ill and in a coma, I'm glad you recovered. But if you missed out, you will know. Anybody who has been alert, following trends, knows that top on the mind of all what we tell you, the environment, climate action. Do you understand? So it also tells you what you see, what people signal as their priority. Money follows priority now.
Yes.
It's like you. If you said eating healthy is a priority for me,
That's where your money will go.
Your money is going towards spending
Exactly.
on eating healthy. So that's the thing. So that's why these conversations are important. They help you know what is the world's priority. That thing should let you know where is going to be the flow of grants. Now, another thing that is a priority is AI. AI for education, AI for climate, AI for everything. So now the world is talking about cyber safety, cyber security, making AI ethical AI, responsible AI, contextual AI. So those things should also tell you. We now that we are in this part of the world where we're still trying to train children in basic computer literacy, we are now positioning ourselves. I'm just giving an example. Mine is now saying you can't have a conversation about AI if a huge fraction of your young population doesn't even have computer literacy. They're going to be cut out, excluded. So it's a principle of inclusion, yes, that the first order priority must be the child must be able to switch on the computer and navigate the desktop. So a conversation and the future of AI in Nigeria also hangs very closely on the conversation of basic computer literacy. So that let's not forget, as we're all pursuing this grand discussion of AI, that our rural children, our children in the under-resourced schools don't even have that basic skill. So anyways, the point is, it's also letting us know if money is going to flow in the direction of AI, how do we tie our work to that conversation? So all those things are critical.
And it does not make us hypocrites.
What's hypocrisy? Is he a hypocrite? Are you a hypocrite?
No, because we don't have. You know why I'm bringing up? Why I'm bringing this?
Yes.
Is because some people, or maybe I've heard. Let me say I've heard that some organizations will just tweak their mission statements whenever they see that this is the direction that.
No, I don't worry. I'm teasing you. I agree completely. Somebody that said that they want to help farmers to, improve farm crop yield. Next thing, they now hear that, AI, can you AI? They just say, farming, AI for farming. No, and that's good actually. No, that's even good because it's good if you sit down in an office and help use AI to make better predictions about, weather changes and help them give farmers better information. Thank you. But not that you now say you want to go and teach teachers how to use AI because you saw that Bill and Melinda Gates and put out a grant for improving teachers in public school knowledge of AI. What's your business? Maybe you say you want to improve food security.
In a classroom that is still.
Thank you. Or you say you want to help us access clean water resources, or toilets. AI for toilets. But if AI is possible, there can be AI for toilet that will help us to flush the toilet. So, sorry, I'm just saying it's good if you are creative.
But it should still tie with
thank you. It must be tied to your mission. Don't be one of those people that, shift your shape. Because they're shape shifters. So you are shifting shape to suit where the money is. So anywhere the money go, anywhere the left is. Please, we know that in politics, so
but not here really.
But there are people like that.
But it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
I think what we're stressing is be informed about the global trends and then keep apace with it. Exactly. So even the work that you're doing should be invested because the global priorities are telling us the global problems. So that's it.
Okay. So now let's dive into the funding itself.
Okay.
So there is the concept of restricted and unrestricted funding.
Okay.
Well, as the name implies, one is restricted, one is not. That means maybe you are tying the restricted funding is tied to a particular project. Okay. So you saw an RFP, AI for farmers, whatever. You applied. And then you said that you were going to do something related to AI for farmers, and you already put in a budget for that, and then you were awarded that grant strictly for that project. It is restricted, but how do you work around it in such a way that one, you still achieve, whatever it is that you've agreed upon in terms of impact, and then looking at our Nigeria being a place where even regular business survival is a whole lot. How do you also manage the funds in such a way that it still helps with your operations? I don't know if you're getting me, because I know that because I know that with unrestricted funds, that one is flexible. So really, how do we play around it in such a way that we still do the work, we work in line with the budgets, and at the same time we're still able to keep afloat as an organization?
Well, I mean, it's difficult
because we don't even know where the next funding is coming from. Typically, it's like that.
No, I like it, Akibi. It's a very real question because this, sometimes these things we'll be talking textbook. It's very real. We face it every
and
day.
the worst part of it is that people will not understand. When they hear that you're working with an NGO like this, they just say, "Hey, this baby's earning in dollars."
I don't know where people got that impression from. Or what am I doing wrong?
Come close out.
No, I never see the dollars now.
Come on here. Come on here.
Maybe I go so blow. I don't know this impression that you people have. Anyway, so people doing the real work. We need to project ourselves more out there so that we can put out a real picture of how painstaking the journey is. How unrewarding. It's not a journey. Look, I always talk, if you know you want to be rich, there's nothing wrong in having an ambition to be the richest man in Africa. Please pursue it. We need you because I'm coming to chase you for funding. But you don't have any business seeking that kind of goal and being in an NGO space. It's called not for profit. It's missionary work. We are modern day Mary's lessons. Anyway, so the truth is, this issue of restricted, unrestricted is hard, especially in an environment like us, maybe ours, where you're not seeing multiple sources of funding, right? Maybe in 1 year you got was 1 year. Maybe that one grant, if you stretching it for 3 years, do you understand? So in that period, you've not seen. There's some people that are lucky; they have multiple grants at the same time, or they have corporate funding, different sources, and they built enough reputation, and their name is just big. Everybody wants to fund them. Everybody wants to, there's those organizations, and there's us. We're struggling. But in principle, if they say the grant is restricted, you don't use it for any purpose other than what it is restricted to. That's the principle. In fact, what happens is that if you don't use all the funding, you're expected to declare what was unspent and return it.
Please recap. Take that again.
So I will say it again. In principle, because I'm principled, if you are given a restricted grant, it means that it is specific to that project. It is for the purpose of implementing that specific thing. It is restricted. The language, open your dictionary, please. Do a refresher. It's not where you exercise your discretion. It's not where I know the struggles you face. I face it too. But that's the principle. So have that conversation with your donor before you sign the dotted lines. Have that conversation that our practice is to sometimes, if we have extra blah 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 blah, are you comfortable with it? Is it within your own policy to accept this term, for us to do it this way? Please, just so that your integrity is not compromised. Because this donor community is small, and if you ruin your name and reputation, it will shock you how that goes around. Like they will communicate, you'll be blacklisted. So protect. You see, trust is a commodity. If you earn it, it can go. You can spend it wisely. Yes. Yeah. This is the moment, especially when you're young in the NGO, like you're a young organization, build trust. Trust is so critical. So if they tell you, and this is your concern, raise your concerns. Thankfully, donor relationships now have matured to the point where the donor does not just give you money in January and pop up in December and begin to say, show me your audited report. Like there are open channels of communication. Some are even coming to visit the project on site. And I always advocate for that. Leave your lovely office in Washington DC or in New York or in Boston. Come down. Or leave your office in London or wherever, in Geneva. Come down. Come and see. See what happens is when they see, they can appreciate your context better. They can appreciate the harsh, volatile nature, the changes, the disruptions. They can appreciate it. They can appreciate the rigor that you're putting in to make the outcomes achievable. They see it. So they are more willing to discuss, deliberate, to dialogue through the process. To say, okay, how can we support you? The conversation, I always love a conversation that reaches, how can we support you to achieve progress? So it comes from building trust. So do things like that. Now, donor communication lines are open in such a way that you can discuss your concerns with a donor, discuss your reservations about the nature of the grant, the terms that are being made, and tell them the reasons you have, tell them your past experience. It's important. A reasonable donor.
I even like the fact that you're saying we should also discuss the terms, because it almost looks as if sometimes we think we are helpless.
Thank you.
For the donor. So everything they say, yes sir, yes sir.
And because you're afraid that they will take away the money.
No, it really shouldn't be like
that.
It should be a negotiation.
Remember what we said at the beginning? Somebody has a stake in you doing that work. They can't come down and do it, but it is part of their mandate. Their organization was set up to make sure that everywhere in the world,
where they are doing that.
Yes. So they need you. So all of us, we are mutual partners. That's why I believe in mutual relationships. And we're trying to, even in this donor organization work, it's time to even the playing field. Distribute the power. Some donors today, in today's world, donors are trying to distribute the power. They're opening up the conversation. Talk back to me, push back, explain, give me reasons why I need to view this differently. Tell them about your context, the context in which you work, but never sign a contract and then go and violate it. Don't begin to exercise your discretion, whether for whatever compelling reasons. Don't then take a restricted grant and say, well, it's important for me to put it into overheads and I'll be creative. Don't do that. You're compromising your integrity. The proper thing is, if you have even not spent all the money, declare it and then, let them be the ones to say it's okay. But usually they would expect you to return it, actually. It's when you have unrestricted grants, and I try to target those grants more, unrestricted grants, because this gives you a wider room to exercise your discretion. So those are some of the important things. It's not easy. That's why I don't know why you put some dollars. It's not easy. It's not easy. But are you going to set up your own now?
Well, that's still in the pipeline.
You have to think of those communities.
But I really need, that's the thing, first of all, because there has to be the need.
Yes.
So it's the need that propels, that propels me into doing. But I just want to ask, like, for Maye, for instance. I'm sorry that I'm saying Maye, but I just have to say Maye.
Let me use Maye.
That's the example. That's the example that we have. So has there ever been a time when have you ever gotten like a restricted fund?
Yes.
How did we go about it?
We used it for the purpose that it was restricted to now.
Was it remaining?
No, it wasn't remaining. Sure, I will tell them that it was remaining. You don't remain. No, but it didn't remain now. In fact, what I've had in my own encounter, because things like changes, I'll use the most recent one. We're supposed to go to schools to deliver Oyo illiteracy.
Okay.
Right? Next thing, fuel prices changed on us. So in fact, what we now found was that the monies budgeted, we had to spend more on mobility. That is, cost of deploying these vehicles to these schools. Transportation costs rose because they were benchmarked on old costs that we didn't foresee changing.
So what's the smart way or smarter way or the best way to budget when you are dealing with a restricted fund?
No, I mean, one of the good, try to put it in miscellaneous. Try to put it in miscellaneous. Some people will resist. Your miscellaneous should not cross a certain, threshold. But if you've done your proposal writing well, you would have put in the clause, you would have explained the risks. So you would have explained the environment that you're functioning in. For instance, any grants that I've written post 2024 has to be very clear about the high inflationary environment that we're operating in. So if I'm telling them that we're in such a high inflationary environment that cost of commodities are changing weekly, and also the forex environment is so volatile because it's subject to fuel prices and all of those things, which have been in the last so many months subject to maybe recurring changes. So when you make a case for that in the body of a proposal, your budget can reflect it, because what that means, I need more bandwidth when it comes to miscellaneous. I need more room for risk mitigation. I'll also tell them that, okay, this is what I'm thinking as a way to mitigate this risk. So we can do this, we can do that. I can buy my purchase things up front. But there are certain things like transportation. You cannot buy. I don't have safe storehouse for storing fuel. So I still have to go weekly to the petrol station to buy it, right? So that's why I'll say you must give me some measure of room in miscellaneous to accommodate these risks, this inflationary risk I've talked about. So justify it in the body of a proposal. Then discuss, like I said, a good grant, a convincing grant, lets your donor come to the table to talk with you. To say, I like the project, I like your methodology, I like the approach, I'm concerned about this, how can we? Then you begin to, explain, and you push back where you need to push back and say, I don't reasonably think, I can't be confident to say that if I do it this way, I'll get the outcomes that we're both seeking. Give me this latitude, give me this room. So I think that's the level we must strive to mature to a point where we can come to the table and explain.
I think that's important. Okay, so now we've spoken about grants, both from the government at the local level, at national level, and at the global level. We've talked about IGR, how an NGO can also have that. I think that
you were also asking,
what about individuals?
Yes, that's maybe we mentioned individuals earlier.
Yes, individuals give, but what's in Nigeria? How?
Let's go there.
How enthusiastic are individuals to give to NGOs? I mean, the ones that are not charities, we know those ones. You go, you see that these kids don't have, maybe it's an orphanage. You can see what the real life issues are, so you can deal with it. But what about
those
NGOs?
orphanages? I will tell you that they are struggling to get consistent funders. So even those ones too, the fact that the need is so obvious doesn't guarantee that they're getting the support they need.
That means it must be harder for organizations when you walk into their office. You can't see who their beneficiaries are, but their beneficiaries are somewhere in the field, like in really marginalized communities. So they have to move to those communities to impact them.
I mean, it all depends.
What is it like? Nigerians,
on the average, so I think I get your
question. But are we
question.
really, like, compared to developed countries where people can just walk in to say, oh, I like what you're doing, I want to support. What's the response rate?
So two things I would like to point out,
rate?
especially if we're comparing it. One, in many of these climates that will be compared to, they have things like tax rebates. So what happens is that for reason of your annual check, your annual giving, or your quarterly giving, like when you're filing your tax returns, you get a rebate of any charity you gave money to. So the incentives are different. So that's the first thing. So individuals want to give.
Motivates you.
Yes, because you're going to get a tax rebate. Corporations want to give because so you're going to find that organization and give it to because you're going to get a rebate on your taxes. So you find that the incentive is woven into the system, so it changes. And I'm speaking specifically to environments like the United States, the UK, this is like that. Now, let's come to Nigeria. We don't have such incentives. However, another thing we find in Nigeria is because of our culture and our communal and extended family system, right? The truth is, you you are an NGO to somebody in your family.
Actually.
Or more than one person in your family.
Yeah.
So the typical African already, charity, the other day where maybe something, they call it black tax. We have different formats in which it plays out. But very rarely are you traveling alone. Especially when you're successful, there are many people on your back that you're carrying. So what it means is that we have very informal sources of giving. So very few already, because when that system is built, you are not you don't begin to look for formal sources of giving, because the way your life is, you are already carrying people. You are carrying people. So there's that. So when we talk about formal sources of giving, formal philanthropy, I'll elaborate on that. Now, when it comes to formal philanthropy, that is, okay, I give a check every year to Mayan for the work it's doing with small libraries in communities. Or I give a check every year to Oluwole Shesha Home for the work it does to support persons with disabilities. You have fewer people playing in that space, right? Again, I already talked about the factor of already many people, life is all about carrying somebody, so you're not looking for any extras to give to. So we don't have the culture of philanthropy, formal philanthropy is not very, rife. Another thing is people tend to feel that when you're very wealthy, then that's why you see when they're announcing, they're talking about a rich person or a very successful person, they say he's a philanthropist. It's now a title. And it's a title that people feel you are eligible to wear when you've achieved wealth. Not in your day-to-day life, like I work as a civil servant, I'm a teacher, which one be philanthropist? That's not you understand? But in other places, even if you're a music teacher of, grade 1, whatever, it's just part and parcel of the way you're raised. Every year, there's a charity you're supporting. Whether it's, children with autism, or this, people always have foundations or charities they support. It's just part and parcel of their culture. For us, it's something that we reserve for Chief Olabode Amao, or Chief Razak Okoye, that kind of thing. Like, that's the way we have it. He's a philanthropist. We are all philanthropists. Like, even if your check, I have people in mind, we have people that just send us 10,000 naira monthly. And it will shock you that even a youth corper can afford that. But it's just not, because your mind is thinking that it's when you're in your 60s, when you build a big company, when you're now, that's when you can become a philanthropist, Another thing is that those who are even traditional philanthropists, there are traditional ways they were told, so they'll go and maybe endow a scholarship in a university. Or they'll go and, give, sewing machines to women in as empowerment, so there are ways or there are ways that we know if it doesn't come that way, you don't know that there's one organization that just supports people to children to improve reading. They go around schools, and this is there. So we don't show interest in learning about organizations. We don't even have systems or organizations that just create a database or a register of different organizations with different projects. Is there a website I can visit if I want to see education, NGOs working on education issues in Ibadan? Okay. Let's not go far. In Ibadan. Is there a portal like that? These were some things that Maya wanted to do. So the space is not even organized. Then there's the credibility of it also, because as you said, there's a perception out there that it's like these people are just scamming people to collect money. So there's also a trust issue. People feel that if I give to you, is the money really going to be plowed into the cause? Is it going to empower lives? Or are you using it to buy the latest Range Rover? Or to buy that, car that looks like the UNICEF, that Jeep, that UNICEF people, that kind of thing. So they'll be like, So so there's trust factor. There's the factor of we don't even know the NGO space is invisible. We don't know who are the actors, who are the credible actors. So the space must be organized. Do you understand? So even I used to tell a friend of mine who works in all these trusts, like for banks, to help organize the sector, so that many families who want to do trust funds, all those kinds of things, they can even endow trusts for the work of visual children with visual impairment, children with autism, different things. Organizations and foundations will just be receiving trust funds from these kinds of legacies.
So that means we still have a long way.
A long way to do. Formal philanthropy is a long way to do. Number one, we have a lot of misconceptions. We feel that it's something that people do when they're old and wealthy. So that has to change. We need to integrate it into our everyday lives. You understand? And don't think that just because that nephew you've been sending money to, that your little nephew in the village that refused to go to school, that now has 3 children that you're helping him to take. You understand? Those are still things that, and that's where I really celebrate Africa. Like we carry our extended families, you understand? Very rarely will you see somebody within a family structure who is rendered homeless on the streets. because somebody will step up, right? So even the homelessness issue that you see in other parts of the world,
It's not as rife.
it's not right, because here, your family network will absorb it.
Yeah.
Somebody will step up and ahead. So there is that. Informal channels for giving really are ensuring a lot of distribution of wealth, that, support is reaching places. Even churches are helping a lot of people pay rents, hospital bills. So many ways of informal giving are really prevalent in our society. Can we formalize it such that those charities or organizations that are set up, existing, and have people on their staff and have to pay salaries as well as do programs can also receive these, goodwill donations to run? It will cover a lot of their costs.
Okay, so now that we've been able to establish that there are different sources of funding for NGOs, but then again, it looks like it's the international community that I would say supports, but it doesn't supports NGOs the more, but we still get funding from there are some people that it's the family's foundation that supports them. Some is the CSR wing of a corporate organization that supports, like the MTN Foundation. I'm sure maybe Airtel has like that. So how do we position ourselves? How should organizations now begin to position themselves so that they can have access to this funding in such a way that is not beggarly, but then it pushes our work out there to the world, and it really helps people who are interested in funding to know that we are putting in the work.
Okay, I'll address that question, but the first thing I want to say is, and I want to use this opportunity to really sort of urge people with means, individuals and families and companies,
even corporate organizations,
yes, companies, that have deep pockets. Let's really rise up to solve our own internal problems in Africa, honestly, because I think that we're not fully aware of how we're more empowered than we think. I remember when Theophilus Danjuma, the former general Theophilus Danjuma, or retired general, set up a grant, a request for proposals. He was supporting NGOs working on issues of education. I know a couple of organizations that got the grant, and the transformation down at the grassroots was felt. So sometimes it's just for people with resources to structure their giving. Sometimes put a set of people together and tell them to put out a call for you, like organize your giving. Don't just be throwing money around. Put it in things that have like there's a clear science and evidence backing this intervention, and the outcome is definite, or is sure to be realized if it is done a certain way. Then you can feel, you go away with the confidence that 500 lives will be transformed if I put in the sum of 10 million naira. So I'm saying this because, for instance, our small library, our nationwide small libraries intervention and digital corners intervention, we are empowered as Africans to solve it. And the thing is, like, it doesn't take long. The gestation period is short. Within 4 weeks, you can see the transformation in the life of a school child who did not have any computer skills, who could not switch on the computer, and yet in 4 weeks is suddenly developing PowerPoint slides, can use Canva, can use certain tools that in the modern world in which we function, they are necessary for them to thrive and to succeed. So I'm saying that, do you know that with 4 people putting resources together, 2 million, we have the resources for a small library project in this community, in that community, with cascading effects to 400 children annually. So you see that these things are doable. This is money that people spend on drinks in a club on a Friday night. So we're empowered more than we think. But back to the donor community and making ourselves eligible. So on the aspect of, because the truth is many organizations are grant dependent. Mine for a long time, because the bulk money is coming from those grants. Sometimes we laugh at the donations we get from, they call it church offering donations, 20,000 here, even your security man's salary is more than those, so that's why, those ones, it takes a lot of people, and what you are marketing, the way you are communicating, telling your story, to be able to get only 10 people to give you, and what you get as the donations, compared to what like the time it takes to put together a grant proposal. By the time you follow through that process, what you will get in return. So most people focus their energies on the grant proposal as opposed to the energy of visiting one rich baba in this place. One rich, you will spend so much time and invest so much energy in trying to visit 20 philanthropists to support the hair. But one grant proposal can solve that. So that's why people are just focused there and all that, because the returns on the time investment, the energy investment seem to be higher. So I do feel that on the one hand, let's boost the culture of local philanthropy, but secondly, to grants. One of the reasons why many organizations are not eligible for grants is their systems and their structures are lacking. They don't have their books. A typical call for grants, we want to see your incorporation documents, we want to see your financial audited statements, independently audited, by the way. They need proof that, you know, you exist legally, you can be traced, you know, and that's where incorporation documents come into play. They need proof that your board, you know, your board is active, because the board is the corporate governing organ. So they want to see that the board meets, the board, you know, really is involved, or not involved in the day-to-day, but sort of like conducts oversight over the day-to-day, and who are people managing it, are they subject to, you know, like governance, you know, principles of corporate governance, things like that. So a donor wants to see those things. A donor wants to see that, you know, you have an office, or you have staff, you have these staff along these you have an organogram. This is the organogram, this is the structure. They want to see that, you know, your previous work, this is what you did. Some of them will even say, show us your previous grants, who funded you, because it's like somebody has done that due diligence already. So if somebody trusted you before, then they can also extend trust your way. So things like that. So what you need to hear from all of this is that you're bargaining for trust. You are trying to signal that I can be trusted. So many people spend so much energy on developing the grant proposal, but their house is not in order. Their financials are not in order. They don't have, you know, they've not filed their annual returns to CAC. In fact, if I check you on CAC, your organization is listed as inactive. Some donors do check. You know, they will reach out to PwC or some of these organizations and say, check the status of this organization and confirm whether. I remember there was a time one donor called me that a proposal was before them, and that the proposal was claiming that through a phone number, certain students could access, you know, digital edtech. I should phone. This was an organization based in a certain country. Was telling me, because I was a previous donor of that, to please phone to confirm the viability of that proposal. So people are doing their back end due diligence. So trust. Can you be trusted? Do your systems and structures and the paperwork indicate that a presumption in your favor of trust? So, you know, these are things to really look at. Some donors will even come as far as to visit you. They say, take us to the site for your project. They want to be able to see the communities that you engage with. They want to see that you do indeed have relationships with stakeholders in the communities where you work. They want to see that, you know, you are recognized in these spaces as an active, you know, promoter of the cause or the SDG in particular.
So you're not just painting something.
Yes. So they're coming to observe you in your full picture, you know, so things like that. So are you a stakeholder? Do other people know you? Are you a member of a consortium? Are you a member of a coalition? Those things matter. Your board, like I said, your board is very important. And then your proposal should be well thought out. It should be backed by evidence. So whatever it is you claim, the area where there's a gap, it shouldn't be anecdotal. It should be a problem that really exists, not by observation of, in my community, it looks to me like there are a lot of unemployed people, or there are a lot of women. We know, you can see. Is it data driven? Is it backed by what's the most recent research saying? Also, the way you are proposing to solve it, does evidence point to that as being the best solution? What have others done prior? Has anybody else done this thing? Then another thing is work with people, especially if you're targeting huge sized grants. You want to get maybe $400,000, 500,000 euros, €1 million. Very rarely would a donor give one entity. They want to see you working as a consortium or a network. So you have to have a partner organization. So build partnerships. Be willing to build partnerships. Be willing to work with others collaboratively. It will make you more eligible for large-sized grants.
Okay, this has been very insightful. So we've learned a lot about the different sources of income for an NGO, and for you who is just getting started, or even for, you know, those organizations that have been in this business for a long time. It's not a bad idea for us to keep reminding ourselves of, you know, some of these things, just so that we stay informed, and then we know how to navigate, you know, the ground. And then for people that you've just stumbled on this podcast, basically, when you see me outside and I say I'm working with an NGO, don't think that there's any manna falling from heaven. No. So we're putting in the work, you know, and we're just
Yeah, so as Motora says, we are putting in the work and it's a lot of heavy lifting. I'm really glad that this episode of the podcast was, useful. At least it was useful to Motora, so I'm extending it to mean that it was useful to you. If you have any questions, you can always send them on our comment section. Like, let us know what your thoughts are or email us. We're always open to hearing and responding as best as we can to your questions. I'm really thrilled that you're joining us all the time and you're telling people about us. I want to believe you are. Have you subscribed yet? Please subscribe. Tell your friend about our podcast. Let them also subscribe. If they work in the NGO space or a non-profit or they're leaders of a non-profit, they really should be listening to us. We are really aiming to democratize the information that will help organizations to build sustainable structures that keep them going, that keep them scaling their impact. I'm still Adam and I love talking with you every week. So tune in next week for another episode of our favorite podcast, Impact Bureau. Bye.